Hello, and welcome to the Talent Match series on navigating the workplace as a student. My name is Alana Hibbert, and I am the career coach for Talent Match, which is a collaboration between the BC Museums Association, the BC Alliance for Arts and Culture, Go2HR, which is the BC Tourism and Hospitality Industries Human Resources Association, as well as ACE-WIL, the Association for Cooperative Education and Work Integrated Learning BC Yukon. This program was developed with the goal of supporting work-integrated learning opportunities for both students and employers in the MATCH, which stands for Museums, Arts, Tourism, Culture, and Hospitality sector. Today's topic of discussion is Young Women of Worth, Advocating for Your Professional Development. WORTH, in this case, stands for Women of Recreation, Tourism, and Hospitality, and is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to educate, elevate, and empower women who work in these sectors, and to work collectively to move the dial for equality. With me today are two students who have been involved in some of the work and research undertaken by WORTH Association, Julie Johnson-Lapine and Sebastien Laroye. Julie is currently a second-year student in the Bachelor of Tourism Management program at Capilano University. She is passionate about advocacy and getting involved on campus through coordinating events for the Tourism Student Association and running the ski club. Post-graduation, she plans to relocate overseas to progress her career in tourism and to pursue a master's in leadership or community development. Sebastien is a second-year Bachelor of Tourism Management student at Capilano University as well. He has extensive experience in the food and beverage sector, is highly athletically involved with rowing and mountaineering, and has aspirations to complete a master's degree program in tourism studies at the Arctic University of Norway post-graduation. I recently saw both Julie and Sebastien presenting at the BC Tourism and Hospitality Conference and wanted to hear more about their research about gender equity in the industry and what the implications of this research might be from a student perspective. So I guess I'll turn it over to Sebastien and Julie now to take us through some of the research, and I'll be asking them questions about some of this research. So my first question for you is, how did you both hear about and get involved in WORTH Association?
Well, I could start. So when first of all, I had no idea. I was very sort of naive, being a sort of a very privileged student, kind of living the dream in the industry that he kind of found to love so much. And I was at a social with our Tourism and Outdoor Recreation Student Association. I think it was back in maybe mid to late September, and our professor and the principal and founder of WORTH Association, with I should mention for those that don't know, is the Women of Outdoor Recreation, Tourism, and Hospitality. And she came to me just saying, I think you have a lot of energy, and that energy could be used for good in this research assistant position that we posted, and we kind of bonded over Judy Kasiyama, who's the founder of Color the Trails. And we just really kind of hit it off, and we decided to, start doing some good work, and, working on things that for me personally is a little bit bigger than myself, and, kind of gives back more to the industry that I will be entering, and to one that I really want to have equal opportunity for everyone, and not just people that look like me and have the background like me, but everyone, and for it to really be a level playing field. So yeah, that's how I got involved.
Great. Julie, how about you?
Yeah, so I actually didn't know about WORTH initially. One of my professors last semester actually recommended me to Joanna to apply for this position. And so I thought it was a great opportunity. I'd never kind of done anything like that before, or even thought about being a research assistant, especially just in research and tourism. And so I applied for the job, and I got it. And that's kind of where I learned about WORTH. And we did the initial focus group, and that's kind of how I joined. Yeah.
I'd love it if you could provide a little bit of background about some of the research you were involved with. Can you speak a little bit about what the goals of the research project were? What was the purpose of conducting this research, and what were you looking to find out?
Absolutely. So what Joanna Yeager, and I guess our other colleague Laurel, kind of outlined to us, and certainly what I was naive of, and I don't know about Julie, maybe she could speak to that. But there's currently, certainly abetted by the COVID-19 pandemic, there's what is called and what they're formerly referring to as the Great Resignation, and that is most felt within at least in our industry, within women, because they do make up 70% of overall of the population of our industry. However, very, very little, and we can get to the numbers later, 30% at the top management and CEOs and all the ones that, have the power and have the say.
Can you speak a little bit about what the process of conducting this research was like? And what did you learn from working on this research project?
So I can talk about the process a little bit, especially again from a student research perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So we were brought into the project a little bit after it had started. So the focus group had already been kind of planned. And so we came in, our first day was going to this focus group. And so there were 6 research questions, there were 6 tables, I think 50 women in leadership roles and just various roles in the tourism industry in Vancouver, I believe. And so after the focus group, we took all the research and we transcribed everything. And from there, we did a thematic analysis, and we were trying to pull different themes from each questions and kind of seeing themes that were going across all 6 questions. And those were kind of the overarching messages that were coming across. And then from there, we did a literature review to cross-reference and see what there was. But as Sebastien said, there's really not much research about women in tourism, especially in BC, but even just globally, there's not a lot of research out there. And so, of course, we're trying to contribute to that. So that's what the process looked like from our end.
Can you tell us about what some of the major findings or key takeaways of this project were? What was the biggest surprise for you that you observed in the findings?
The biggest ones, like I said, transparency is the biggest one, and transparency in the pay, the benefits that you have, the amount of learning that you can do on the job, inclusion, the types of policies that are structured, and also just the transparency in the career path that you're able to have with a company. And the second one is inclusion leaders, so having champions for inclusion. And the recommendations that we kind of gathered from the research was evaluating opportunities for to create employee resource groups, and then mentorship committees, hiring panels, and things like that. And the third one, and again, a big one that we've said this word already so many times, about flexibility. And like Seb mentioned, so one size doesn't fit all. Again, with lifestyle, people want different things. So the recommendation for this is evaluating the benefits that companies have, and then learning plans, and also scheduling. So those are the main takeaways from the research.
Worth looked at the findings of the research and created a self-audit for organizations, which can serve as a tool for them to better understand how they're doing in terms of retaining and developing women in the industry. And the checklist that was created is quite comprehensive and includes a lot of recommendations. And I'm hoping that you might speak briefly about some of the recommendations that seem particularly significant to you as students who are working currently in the sector.
I think the recommendations that personally were the most relevant was transparency, because being in this career, although I love tourism, I want to know that there's a place for me and that there's opportunities for growth. So having transparency from companies that I'm applying for, and knowing how I can grow. And even this summer, I applied for, I just recently started my co-op. And when I was interviewing for places like that, by doing this research, I feel like I knew what to ask for. And so I think the checklist gives you an opportunity to kind of think about what you want from your job, because everyone wants different things. So yeah, transparency for me. And then also opportunities to learn. So having a company that wants to invest in me is really important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
And yeah, it's just like Julie said, and seeing it from obviously a different perspective, being interested in different things and whatnot. Me being kind of on the adventure side, less so than a high-paying desk job. And for me, it's especially about diversity policy is very important, because I don't obviously want to just be given a position, for who I am specifically. It's more about just the qualified candidate and the one where it kind of recognizes the state of the actual world and not whether it's biased or not. Just knowing the policies, seeing them, that they actually in fact exist, and that they are sound, with our recommendations, or at least with ones that actually make sense and that do provide and facilitate diversity and diversity of opportunity, and just diversity for people who apply and within their employees and management and whatnot.
Many of the recommendations put forth in the audit, as you said, were targeted towards employers that are trying to improve gender equity within their organizations through better employment practices. And this, I think, speaks to the fact that a lot of the issues that women face in the industry are rooted in structural inequities and require a collective response at this sort of larger industry level to make changes. In your own experience, or extrapolating from some of the recommendations, again, that were put forth in the research, are there things that young women entering the sector can do on a more individual level to better advocate for themselves in the workplace, or to be empowered to seek out positions of leadership within the sector?
I can take this question. So I've definitely thought about this quite a bit, actually. And again, from personal experience, I feel like you've got to remember, and on an individual level, you've got to remember that not everyone is going to agree with you or even like you. And you feel like you have to be firm with what you believe and advocating in your ideas. And I mean, think about it, like you put the time in to be where you are and to work towards that. And so don't let people take away your accomplishments or your ideas away from you. And I also think a lot of people, not just women, have like imposter syndrome. And I feel like they feel like they're not qualified enough to apply for certain positions or pursue opportunities. And like in my case, for my research position, like I didn't know what I was doing, but I wanted to try and I wanted to learn, and I think that's the biggest thing. And I was passionate about gaining a new experiences, and I wasn't afraid to fail. And so I think that that's the biggest thing, is we always want to look perfect and like achieve perfection, but there's no way to get there unless you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, of course, like within reason. But I think it's taking a leap in yourself, and like Seb said, knowing your worth is the biggest thing. Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole issue, is people that are stepping away because they are feeling their worth is not being met by their employer, and they're moving to a different industry, or they're moving to a different company. But for a lot of them, they're actually leaving the industry, and that's what the whole point of this research was to bring those retention strategies back, and knowing what those are, and being, it's a two-way street when it comes to communication. They tell you what they want and what they will provide, and you tell your expectations as well. And I think many employers, especially today, coming back from this massive pandemic where tourism, the hardest hit, the first to go and the last to come back, will do and accommodate what you ask.
Also, something I'd like to add, again, from the perspective of like young women entering the industry, is something that I've thought a lot about as a student, and the friends that I've kind of cultivated in university, is I have like a support system of women who are all super ambitious, and like when I get different jobs on campus, or when I like have achievements, I'm excited to bring it to them, and they're so supportive, and we like lift each other up. And I think that when there are people that are potentially trying to bring you down, or like have that negative energy, when you have those people around you that where you can support each other, I think that's really, really important too. Yeah. And just having that in your life in general too, but just even when you're applying for positions like that, yeah, having a good support system is important.
One of the major areas identified in the research as being important to the retention and advancement of women in the tourism and hospitality industry was around learning on the job and professional development. Now, you're both students who are in a university program with the work integrated learning component, which actively promotes professional development in the industry. In the coursework of your program or prep work for entering work placement, is gender equity and or other issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion addressed directly in the curriculum? And if so, how is it addressed?
Sure. So I could quickly touch on that. So I know we're just first and second year students, so our courses are still rather broad, sort of umbrella terms, cross-cultural tourism or entrepreneurship. I'm not super into the specifics yet. And so, no, there's certainly not, a diversity in the workplace course as of yet. And that is sort of, a result of the lack of, literary research and papers and whatnot out there, right, to build a course out of. That doesn't mean it's not possible. That just means, that is an opportunity yet. However, it obviously is touched on because it sort of is that elephant in the room, not even, but it's a reflection of the industry that we're very naive of in the classroom, but it is addressed. And
what would you like employers to know about supporting greater equity in the workplace for students? Are there supports that you can that you would like to see in place for young women entering work placements that you can identify as being particularly important or meaningful for young women who are about to do co-op placements or about to start off in the sector?
Yeah, I can touch on this. I think the first thing that comes to mind that the most important is that when you're entering a workplace, especially if it's co-op, it's your first time working in like a very professional environment. And that can be nerve-wracking. And again, the imposter syndrome, like you don't really know where you fit in. And I think what would be really beneficial is having like a mentorship program. And that's something that we touched on in the research and that Joanna is also trying to cultivate with Worth. But I think that that would be extremely beneficial to kind of have someone that can mentor you. So if it's one person in the office, even if it's not someone you work with, that you can kind of like debrief with and they can help you kind of understand what's going on, like this, the subtleties of the job that you're doing. Because when you apply for a job, like part of the fun is just actually getting the job. But then when you get there, you're like, wait a second, like, what am I supposed to do? You only know the things in your job description, but there's so much more to it than that. And so I think if there's someone who's already in that environment, you know, they can, especially if they volunteer to be your mentor, like they can help you through that, you know, especially, and even if they're like, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but there are some people that are like natural teachers and who like to share their experiences. And I think that, yeah, it'd be beneficial kind of both ways for the mentor and the mentee.
Now you're both heading into work this summer. How are you planning to apply what you've learned from your involvement with Worth and the research with Worth as your careers move forward in the industry?
again, it's so just the as data analytics and research and whatnot, that practice is invaluable experience. We're having our name put on a published paper. We've done research. We've transcribed research. I mean, we're getting very, very valuable experience that can be utilized in our careers, whether we want to be, data analysts or data collectors later down the road. I happen to literally be a trail data collector out of Field, BC for Parks Canada this summer. So I will literally be working with data all summer, just a different type of data. Through the rest of your career, this type of work, at least for me personally, will be very much influenced by, at the very least, the sort of policy aspect. So I really want to start a adventure tourism venture. I want to start a company somewhere insane, like Baffin Island or something, and make some hut system. I mean, I'm really like kind of this mountaineer, adrenaline junkie type of guy. And I think it's not just men that like that. So taking everyone, seeing all the people that are interested and having very transparent policies, following our recommendations and what I've learned, and maybe holding to account the rest of my industry, the adventure tourism industry. I also, maybe tomorrow, I've also applied for an internship with the Adventure Travel and Trade Association, and it's looking good. That has a huge ability to influence internally through that. And if you're in adventure tourism, you have to be part of the ATTA. There's no question, because they're just, sort of the governing body, and they have all these great conferences for you to go to. And that's probably the biggest seller. But that is a platform for what I've learned to have, continue this trend of being part of something that's bigger than myself. So yeah, taking a lot of those policies, I think, is the biggest thing.
So for the research, the way that I would kind of incorporate that into my career in the future, I think overall, even just being part of this project, I didn't really understand what advocacy was before. And so I think that through the research and through even just like every single little point that were coming from like individual people, I realized that like I want to advocate for myself more. And I haven't always done that in the past. I've just taken what's given to me, and I get what I get and I don't get upset type of thing. And so I really want to advocate for myself more and push for what I believe in or what I feel like I deserve. Because again, to use this word again, but like I know my worth, and I want to recognize that, and I want to communicate that too. And so again, the specific ones that I feel like I want to take with me is the transparency, especially with communication. Like pay transparency is really important, but I also feel like communication, like communicating expectations And I mean, I look at this even just in my personal life, but in professional life too, communicating expectations from employers and also what I expect from them in terms of the benefits that I want, in terms of time off, like all that kind of stuff. And then professional development. Because again, if I'm going to apply to a job, I want to know that there's opportunity to grow. Like I'm not just there I didn't go into tourism just because I want a job. Like although there is like a kind of a growing industry, and like right now there's a lot of jobs open, I want to learn, and I want to learn as much as I can at each job, and I want to learn different things about the industry. And so that's really important to me. And something else that I've kind of been thinking about after the conference is that just seeing Joanna and Laurel kind of present, and obviously Sebastien as well, and seeing the people kind of in the crowd made it really real for me that a lot of women want to see change. And the fact is, like, I will be going into that, with fresh eyes. And so also being part of a student association at my school made me realize that, like, I can have change, like I can affect change even just within the university. So I've talked to Joanna about potentially starting like a Worth chapter and then getting women, because I've met a lot of like really ambitious, smart women in my program that I've just like, I look up to, like I see there's so much in them, and they're so passionate. And so I'd love to get like a group of people to kind of together at Capilano and be part of that. And it'd be awesome if it could be something that's like at different universities, but that's up to Joanna. That's her, so it's like her organization. But I think that would be really cool. So yeah, I think that's what I took away. So not specific points as much, but just the goal of the project itself is like kind of what sparked something in me to look forward and look at what I want my career to be.
Well, that's great. And thank you so much, Julie and Sebastien. This was a really insightful discussion, and it was just wonderful seeing the passion that you bring to this discussion. And I appreciate you taking the time, especially because I know you're so busy right now and it's a busy time of year. I'm going to link to the Worth Association Research Takeaways and Gender Equity Audit in the notes. We'll also link to the Worth website if this is an organization that students would like to know more about or perhaps be involved with. Please visit the Talent Match student website, where students can find other resources if they're students who are interested or are currently working in museums, arts, tourism, culture, and hospitality sectors in BC. And I, Alana Hibbert, can be reached at ahibbert@uvic.ca if anybody who's watching has additional questions. Thank you so much and take care.